Today is Mother's Day, and as such, we'll be taking a break from our studies in John's Gospel to take time out to honor our mothers. Now, as we seek to honor our mothers today, I want us to extend that honor beyond the women who gave birth to us to all the important women in our lives and to those who are yet only mothers in training. Well, for many of us, as we look at some of what comes part and parcel with motherhood, our birth moms will undoubtedly come to mind. But for some, maybe not. While giving birth to someone certainly makes you a parent, there is so much more that makes you a mother. Indeed, it is entirely possible that a mother's love has been shown to you by someone with whom you don't share a single drop of blood. Maybe it was shown by an adoptive mother or a foster mother who lovingly took you into their home. Perhaps you were hosted as a foreign exchange student where a kind woman introduced you to a whole new culture. Maybe you think of your grandmother who always had the best back scratches, or your fun aunt who always took you to play in the park. Maybe you remember a time when your big sister looked out for you or stood up for you, or a time when you were hurting and your little sister was there to try and comfort you. Maybe even in small pieces of your life, women whom you hardly knew extended a mother's love to you. A teacher who took special interest in seeing you succeed when you were struggling. A nurse whose kind gentleness dispelled your fear at a scary doctor's visit. A postwoman who always had a warm smile and a friendly wave whenever she brought the mail. Or a neighbor who always had kind words for you. It's entirely possible that a mother's love was even shown to you without you ever knowing it, when a little old lady at church always remembered to lift you up in her prayers. And so whether you are a mother or grandmother, an adoptive or foster mother, an aunt, sister, mother-in-law, mother in training, or have ever shown a mother's love to others, it is my hope that we can lift you up and honor and encourage you in the Lord today. And to do this, we'll be looking at the book of Ruth. However, instead of focusing on Ruth, we'll be looking at Naomi, Ruth's mother-in-law. As in her, we see much of what comes part and parcel with motherhood, and we see much of what is wonderful about how God has made a mother. So now, if you care to open your Bibles and join me in reading along, we're going to be reading together the whole book of Ruth as we get started today. Ruth, starting in Chapter 1. In the days when the judges ruled, there was a famine in the land. So a man from Bethlehem in Judah, together with his wife and 2 sons, went to live for a while in the country of Moab. The man's name was Elimelech. His wife's name was Naomi. And the names of his 2 sons were Mahlon and Chilion. They were Ephrathites from Bethlehem, Judah. And they went to Moab and lived there. Now Elimelech, Naomi's husband, died, and she was left with her 2 sons. They married Moabite women, one named Orpah and the other Ruth. After they had lived there about 10 years, both Mahlon and Chilion also died, and Naomi was left without her 2 sons and her husband. When Naomi heard in Moab that the Lord had come to the aid of the people by providing food for them, she and her daughters-in-law prepared to return home from there. With her 2 daughters-in-law, she left the place where she had been living and set out on the road that would take them back to the land of Judah. Then Naomi said to her 2 daughters-in-law, "Go back, each of you, to your mother's home. May the Lord show you kindness, as you have shown kindness to your dead husbands and to me. May the Lord grant that each of you will find rest in the home of another husband." Then she kissed them goodbye, and they wept aloud and said to her, "We will go back with you to your people." But Naomi said, "Return home, my daughters. Why would you come with me? Am I going to have any more sons who would become your husbands? Return home, my daughters. I am too old to have another husband. Even if I thought there was still hope for me, even if I had a husband tonight and then gave birth to sons, would you wait until they grew up? Would you remain unmarried for them? No, my daughters. It is more bitter for me than for you, because the Lord's hand has turned against me." At this they wept aloud again. Then Orpah kissed her mother-in-law goodbye, but Ruth clung to her. "Look," said Naomi, "your sister-in-law is going back to her people and her gods. Go back with her." But Ruth replied, "Don't urge me to leave you or to turn back from you. Where you go, I will go, and where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord deal with me, be it ever so severely, if even death separates you and me." When Naomi realized that Ruth was determined to go with her, she stopped urging her. So the two women went on until they came to Bethlehem. When they arrived in Bethlehem, the whole town was stirred because of them, and the women exclaimed, "Can this be Naomi?" "Don't call me Naomi," she told them. "Call me Mara, because the Almighty has made my life very bitter. I went away full, but the Lord has brought me back empty. Why call me Naomi? The Lord has afflicted me. The Almighty has brought misfortune upon me." So Naomi returned from Moab, accompanied by Ruth the Moabite, her daughter-in-law, arriving in Bethlehem as the barley harvest was beginning. Now Naomi had a relative on her husband's side, a man of standing from the clan of Elimelech, whose name was Boaz. And Ruth the Moabite said to Naomi, "Let me go to the fields and pick up the leftover grain behind anyone whose eyes I find favor." Naomi said to her, "Go ahead, my daughter." So she went out, entered a field, and began to glean behind the harvesters. As it turned out, she was working in a field belonging to Boaz, who was from the clan of Elimelech. Just then Boaz arrived from Bethlehem and greeted the harvesters. "The Lord be with you." "The Lord bless you," they answered. Boaz asked the overseer of his harvesters, "Who does that young woman belong to?" The overseer replied, "She is the Moabite who came back from Moab with Naomi. She said, 'Please, let me glean and gather among the sheaves behind the harvesters.' She came into the field and has remained here from morning till now, except for a short rest in the shelter." So Boaz said to Ruth, "My daughter, listen to me. Don't go and glean in another field, and don't go away from here. Stay here with the women who work for me. Watch the field where the men are harvesting and follow along after the women. I have told the men not to lay a hand on you, and whenever you are thirsty, go and get a drink from the water jars the men have filled." At this she bowed down with her face to the ground. She asked him, "Why have I found such favor in your eyes that you notice me, a foreigner?" Boaz replied, "I've been told all about what you have done for your mother-in-law since the death of your husband, and how you left your father and mother and your homeland and came to live with a people you did not know before. May the Lord repay you for what you have done. May you be richly rewarded by the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to take refuge." "May I continue to find favor in your eyes, my lord," she said. "You have put me at ease by speaking kindly to your servant, though I do not have a standing of one of your servants." At mealtime, Boaz said to her, "Come over here. Have some bread and dip it in the wine vinegar." When she sat down with the harvesters, he offered her some roasted grain. She ate all she wanted and had some left over. As she got up to glean, Boaz gave orders to his men. "Let her gather among the sheaves, and don't reprimand her. Even pull out some stalks for her from the bundles and leave them for her to pick up, and don't rebuke her." So Ruth gleaned in the field until evening. Then she threshed the barley she had gathered, and it amounted to about an ephah. She carried it back to town, and her mother-in-law saw how much she had gathered. Ruth also brought out and gave her what she had left over after she had eaten enough. Her mother-in-law asked her, "Where did you glean today? Where did you work? Blessed be the man who took notice of you." Then Ruth told her mother-in-law about the one whose place she had been working. "The name of the man I work with today is Boaz," she said. "The Lord bless him," Naomi said to her daughter-in-law. He has not stopped showing his kindness to the living and the dead. She added, That man is a close relative. He is one of our guardian redeemers. Then Ruth the Moabitess said, He even said to me, Stay with my workers until they finish harvesting all my grain. Naomi said to Ruth, her daughter-in-law, It will be good for you, my daughter, to go with the women who work for him, because in someone else's field you might be harmed. So Ruth stayed close to the women of Boaz to glean until the barley and wheat harvests were finished, and she lived with her mother-in-law. One day, Ruth's mother-in-law, Naomi, said to her, My daughter, I must find a home for you where you will be well provided for. Now, Boaz, with whose women you have worked, is a relative of ours. Tonight, he will be winnowing barley on the threshing floor. Wash, put on perfume, and get dressed in your best clothes. Then go down to the threshing floor, but don't let him know you are there until he has finished eating and drinking. When he lies down, note the place where he is lying. Then go and uncover his feet and lie down. He will tell you what to do. I will do whatever you say, Ruth answered. So she went down to the threshing floor and did everything her mother-in-law told her to do. When Boaz had finished eating and drinking and was in good spirits, he went over to lie down at the far end of the grain pile. Ruth approached quietly, uncovered his feet, and lay down. In the middle of the night, something startled the man. He turned, and there was a woman lying at his feet. Who are you? He asked. I am your servant Ruth, she said. Spread the corner of your garment over me, since you are a guardian redeemer of our family. The Lord bless you, my daughter, he replied. This kindness is greater than that which you have shown earlier. You have not run after the younger men, whether rich or poor. And now, my daughter, don't be afraid. I will do for you all you ask. All the people of my town know that you are a woman of notable character. Although it is true that I am a guardian redeemer of our family, there is another who is more closely related than I. Stay here for the night, and in the morning, if he wants to do his duty as your guardian redeemer, good, let him redeem you. But if he is not willing, as surely as the Lord lives, I will do it. Lie here until morning. So she lay at his feet until morning, but got up before anyone could be recognized. And he said, No one must know that a woman came to the threshing floor. He also said, Bring me the shawl you are wearing and hold it out. When she did so, he poured into it 6 measures of barley and placed the bundle on her. Then he went back to town. When Ruth came to her mother-in-law, Naomi asked, How did it go, my daughter? Then she told her everything Boaz had done for her, and added, He gave me these 6 measures of barley, saying, Don't go back to your mother-in-law empty-handed. Then Naomi said, Wait, my daughter, until you find out what happens, for this man will not rest until the matter is settled today. Meanwhile, Boaz went up to the town gate and sat there just as the guardian redeemer he had mentioned came along. Boaz said, Come over here, my friend, and sit down. So he went over and sat down. Boaz took 10 of the elders of the town and said, Sit here. And they did so. Then he said to the guardian redeemer, Naomi, who has come back from Moab, is selling a piece of land that belonged to our relative Elimelech. I thought I should bring the matter to your attention and suggest that you buy it in the presence of these seated here and in the presence of the elders of my people. If you will redeem it, do so. But if you will not, tell me, so I will know. For no one has the right to do it except you, and I am next in line. I will redeem it, he said. Then Boaz said, On the day you buy the land from Naomi, you also acquire Ruth the Moabite, the dead man's widow, in order to maintain the name of the dead with his property. At this, the guardian redeemer said, Then I cannot redeem it because I might endanger my own estate. You redeem it yourself. I cannot do it. Now, in earlier times in Israel, for the redemption and transfer of property to become final, one party took off his sandal and gave it to the other. This was the method of legalizing transactions in Israel. So the guardian redeemer said to Boaz, Buy it yourself. and he removed his sandal. Then Boaz announced to the elders and all the people, "Today you are witnesses that I have bought from Naomi all the property of Elimelech, Kilion, and Mahlon. I have also acquired Ruth the Moabite, Mahlon's widow, as my wife, in order to maintain the name of the dead with his property, so that his name will not disappear from among his family or from his hometown. Today you are witnesses." Then the elders and all the people at the gate said, "We are witnesses. May the Lord make the woman who is coming into your home like Rachel and Leah, who together built up the family of Israel. May you have a standing in Ephrathah and be famous in Bethlehem. Through the offspring the Lord gives you by this young woman, may your family be like that of Perez, whom Tamar bore to Judah." So Boaz took Ruth, and she became his wife. When he made love to her, the Lord enabled her to conceive, and she gave birth to a son. The women said to Naomi, "Praise be to the Lord, who this day has not left you without a guardian redeemer. May he become famous throughout Israel. He will renew your life and sustain you in your old age. For your daughter-in-law, who loves you, and who is better to you than 7 sons, has given him birth." Then Naomi took the child in her arms and cared for him. The women living there said, "Naomi has a son," and they named him Obed. He was the father of Jesse, the father of David. This then is the family line of Perez. Perez was the father of Hezron, Hezron the father of Ram, Ram the father of Amminadab, Amminadab the father of Nahshon, Nahshon the father of Salmon, Salmon the father of Boaz, Boaz the father of Obed, Obed the father of Jesse, and Jesse the father of David. What a wonderful account the Lord has given us here in the book of Ruth. I always enjoy reading that one. Now, the principal purpose of the book of Ruth is to point us toward our true kinsman redeemer, Jesus Christ, and to bring glory to him. However, woven into this account is a wonderful story of motherhood, and in it we can see the wonderful way that our Heavenly Father has made our earthly mothers. Starting in verses 1 and 2. In the days when the judges ruled, there was a famine in the land. So a man from Bethlehem in Judah, together with his wife and 2 sons, went to live for a while in the country of Moab. The man's name was Elimelech. His wife's name was Naomi. And the names of his 2 sons were Mahlon and Kilion. They were Ephrathites from Bethlehem, Judah. And they went to Moab and lived there. We open our look at Naomi by seeing a mother's challenge. Very often in a family, the mother can get the feeling that she's just along for the ride. The rest of the family seems to have the ability to drive things in all sorts of chaotic directions, but in the end, the mother often ends up picking up the pieces. Here as we open, we see that the decision is made by Elimelech that they need to pack up and move over to Moab. And really, if we dig into it, we don't necessarily see that the Lord was involved in this decision, and we do see some disastrous consequences as a result. In verses 3 and 5 and 20 and 21. Now Elimelech, Naomi's husband, died, and she was left with her 2 sons. They married Moabite women, one named Orpah and the other Ruth. After they had lived there about 10 years, both Mahlon and Kilion also died. And Naomi was left without her 2 sons and her husband. And then picking up in verse 20. "Don't call me Naomi," she told them. "Call me Mara, because the Almighty has made my life very bitter. I went away full, but the Lord has brought me back empty. Why call me Naomi? The Lord has afflicted me. The Almighty has brought misfortune upon me." Then we see a mother's burden and a mother's sorrow. A mother's heart is burdened with the love for her family. When those she loves hurt, she hurts with them. When those she loves pass away, a terrible hole is left in her life, and sorrow enters in. For Naomi, this sorrow ran so deep that she didn't even want to be called Naomi anymore. Naomi means pleasant, and at this point in her life, bereft of her husband and her 2 sons and left destitute, there was very little that was pleasant. Her life had become bitter to her to the point where she said, "Look, don't call me Naomi anymore. Naomi means pleasant, and my life isn't very pleasant anymore. Instead, call me Mara. Mara means bitter. That's what my life has become, and that's what I want to be called now." Naomi's heart was so burdened with the sorrow for her departed family that she entered into a time of grief and mourning that in her estimation would last the rest of her days. And so she figured that she would change her name to match her mourning. Later in time in Victorian England, if a woman was widowed of her husband, she would enter into a period of mourning where she would wear all black clothes and only black jewelry and keep her face veiled in black. She would do this for 2 full years, as that was thought to be the natural period of grief in those days for her lost husband. Like with Naomi's name change, others could look at the appearance of these women and get a sense of the grief that was now felt deep inside of them. Now, as an interesting side note, Victorian men, on the other hand, only had to wear a black armband for a week to show mourning for the loss of a wife. After that, they were expected to get out there and find their children a new mother. Such was the importance of a mother's role in the home that the position could not remain vacant even for a little while. Picking up in verses 8 and 9. Then Naomi said to her 2 daughters-in-law, "Go back, each of you, to your mother's home. May the Lord show you kindness as you have shown kindness to your dead husbands and to me. May the Lord grant that each of you will find rest in the home of another husband." She kissed them goodbye, and they wept aloud. In these verses, we see a mother's selflessness. Would it have been better for Naomi to have her daughters-in-law remain with her? Yes, absolutely. Ecclesiastes 4, 9 through 12 tells us 2 are better than 1 because they have a good return for their labor. If either of them falls down, one can help the other up. But pity anyone who falls and has no one to help them up. Also, if 2 lie down together, they will keep warm. But how can one keep warm alone? Though one may be overpowered, 2 can defend themselves. A cord of 3 strands is not quickly broken. We see, though, that Naomi wants what is best for Ruth and Orpah, even if it is to her own detriment. And if there's a greater hallmark of motherhood, I sure don't know what it is. Verses 11 to 13. But Naomi said, "Return home, my daughters. Why would you come with me? Am I going to have any more sons who could become your husbands? Return home, my daughters. I am too old to have another husband. Even if I thought there was still hope for me, even if I had a husband tonight and then gave birth to sons, would you wait until they grew up? Would you remain unmarried for them? No, my daughters. It is more bitter for me than for you, because the Lord's hand is turned against me." Now we see a mother's practicality on display. Naomi looks at the logistics of the situation and says, "Look, this ain't going to work out. Even if I could have a new son tomorrow, what are you going to do? Wait for them to grow up and then marry him? Come on, there's no way. You 2 had better go back to Moab where your prospects are much more practical." And the side of practicality is one that most mothers develop over time. Indeed, they just about have to in order to manage their household. "No, I'd better not send Billy to school wearing white today. It's Thursday and he's got art class where they'll be finger painting. Ooh, I'd better get something out to thaw for dinner that'll cook quickly later, otherwise we'll be late for Susie's softball game," etc., etc., etc. All mothers have to have this eye for practicality if they're going to survive. Then chapter 2, verses 2 and 3. And Ruth the Moabite said to Naomi, "Let me go to the fields and pick up the leftover grain behind anyone in whose eyes I find favor." Naomi said to her, "Go ahead, my daughter." So she went out, entered a field, and began to glean behind the harvesters. As it turned out, she was working in a field belonging to Boaz, who was from the clan of Elimelech. Here we see a mother's position within a household. Even though Ruth is a grown woman, we still see her respect Naomi's position and request her permission before setting out. Very often, mothers seem to be the real gatekeepers in the household. What home hasn't heard the phrase, "Go ask your mother," or "What did your mother say?" In verses 10 to 12, at this she bowed with her face to the ground. She asked him, "Why have I found such favor in your eyes that you notice me, a foreigner?" Boaz replied, "I've been told all about what you have done for your mother-in-law since the death of your husband, how you left your father and mother and your homeland and went to live with a people you did not know before. May the Lord repay you for what you have done. May you be richly rewarded by the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have now come to take refuge." And then we see a mother honored. And as a result of showing that honor, we see how highly esteemed is one who honors their mother. Exodus 20:12 says, "Honor your father and your mother so that you may live long in the land the Lord your God is giving to you." We read later that this is the first commandment with the promise. If you honor your father and mother, you will be blessed with a long life in the land that the Lord is giving to you. Blessing comes to those who honor their mother. We see this lived out very clearly in the lives of Ruth and Naomi. Verses 17 to 19. So Ruth gleaned in the field until evening. Then she threshed the barley she had gathered, and it amounted to about an ephah. She carried it back to town, and her mother-in-law saw how much she had gathered. Ruth also brought out and gave her what she had left over after she had eaten enough. Her mother-in-law asked her, "Where did you glean today? Where did you work? Blessed be the man who took notice of you." And Ruth told her mother-in-law about the one whose place she had been working. "The name of the man I work with today is Boaz," she said. Now here Naomi shows off a mother's keen eye. You ever try to sneak something by your mother? Yeah, how'd that go? Whether it was cookies from the cookie jar or a wild piercing or haircut or a bad report card, you weren't getting it past your mother, were you? She wasn't missing a thing. Now, it's not that Ruth was trying to sneak anything by Naomi here, but when Ruth came back with more than the usual amount that one would expect from a day of gleaning, Naomi took notice. And in verse 20, "The Lord bless him," Naomi said to her daughter-in-law. "He has not stopped showing his kindness to the living and the dead," she added. "That man is our close relative. He's one of our kinsman redeemers." After taking notice of the bountiful blessing that Ruth had brought home, we see Naomi exhibit a mother's right perspective on things. The Lord bless him. He, as in the Lord, has not stopped showing his kindness to the living and the dead. Naomi saw the blessing and then rightly praised the Lord. Verses 22 and 23, Naomi said to Ruth, her daughter-in-law, "It will be good for you, my daughter, to go with the women who work for him, because in someone else's field you might be harmed." So Ruth stayed close to the women of Boaz to glean until the barley and wheat harvests were finished, and she lived with her mother-in-law. Here in Naomi, we see a mother's care. Naomi is well aware of the dangers of the world, and like any loving mother, she desires to see Ruth kept from danger. And so Naomi advises Ruth, based on the blessings received and the familial relation with Boaz, that Ruth should continue to glean in Boaz's fields. While all mothers hope that their children would find material success, they hope much more so that they would remain safe and healthy in the process. Ruth 3:1. One day, Ruth's mother-in-law, Naomi, said to her, "My daughter, I must find a home for you where you will be well provided for." Here, as Naomi shows us a mother's desire, we see a change in her and Ruth's focus. Previously, they've been concerned with their short-term survival. Now, they're focusing on their long-term security. All mothers long to see their children well throughout their lives, and they all desire a godly spouse for their children with which they can have security. The verses we looked at earlier in Ecclesiastes with regards to two being better than one are often read at weddings. Our spouses often not only provide us with a measure of financial security, but also emotional security as they stand with us through the storms of life. And our spouses are often a wonderful help as they encourage and build us up in the Lord, where we find our spiritual security. It's not uncommon to hear of mothers praying for their children's spouses from the time that they are born, or even before. All mothers desire what is best for their children, and Naomi is no exception. At my grandmother's funeral, my father told the story about the first time he ever went to take my mother out on a date. When he went to pick her up, my grandmother sat him down and made him take a written test before they could go anywhere. Well, I guess he must have passed. My grandmother wasn't going to let her daughter go out with just anyone. Her desire was that my mother have someone good. And well, I think that her and Naomi would have gotten along pretty well. Verses 2 and 3. Now Boaz, with whose women you have worked, is a relative of ours. Tonight he will be winnowing barley on the threshing floor. Wash, put on perfume, and get dressed in your best clothes. Then go down to the threshing floor, but don't let him know you are there until he has finished eating and drinking. When he lies down, note the place where he is lying, then go and uncover his feet and lie down. He will tell you what to do. Then we see Naomi display a mother's cleverness and wisdom. You get the impression that the wheels have been turning for a while on this matter, as we see that this is a pretty thorough and well thought out plan. Mothers are often known for clever solutions to challenging problems. They are also known for giving wise advice. And then verses 13 to 17. So Boaz took Ruth, and she became his wife. When he made love to her, the Lord enabled her to conceive, and she gave birth to a son. The women said to Naomi, Praise be to the Lord, who this day has not left you without a guardian redeemer. May he become famous throughout Israel. He will renew your life and sustain you in your old age. For your daughter-in-law, who loves you and who is better to you than 7 sons, has given him birth. Then Naomi took the child in her arms and cared for him. The women living there said, Naomi has a son, and they named him Obed. He was the father of Jesse, the father of David. And lastly, here we see a mother's blessing. A mother's heart is tied to her family. When there is joy in her family, there is joy in her heart. We see so much so here for Naomi that she is now going by Naomi again, pleasant, instead of the bitter Mara. Now, even though I've only taken a very limited sampling of mothers, based on how I've seen Waldley's joy lift Pam up, and how his grandmother's delighted by just about everything that he does, I must conclude this phenomenon is universal across mothers everywhere. Our joy is their joy. Our blessing is their blessing. This is the wonderful way that God has made mothers, and this is the wonderful way that he blesses them. This is the wonderful way that God has made mothers, and this is the wonderful way that he blesses us. Would you all join me in a word of prayer? Our God and Father, I thank you so much for our mothers. I thank you for the chance that we have today to lift up our mothers everywhere. Lord, I pray for all the women who have ever shown a mother's love, whether they have been blessed with their own children or not. I pray that your hand of blessing would be upon them this day. I thank you for this account that we've read of Ruth and Naomi, and how Naomi displays so much that goes part and parcel with motherhood, how she displays so much of how you have wonderfully made our mothers. Lord, I pray that your blessing would be upon us this day. And I pray that you be with families everywhere as they seek to celebrate and lift up their mothers together. I pray that all families everywhere would look to you and glorify you as their great head. And as they do so and as they follow after you, whole blessings, or whole families would find blessings in you. All this I pray in Jesus' name. Amen. A benediction today comes from Proverbs chapter 31, verses 28 to 31. Her children arise and call her blessed, her husband also, and he praises her. Many women do noble things, but you surpass them all. Charm is deceptive, and beauty is fleeting, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. Honor her for all that her hands have done, and let her works bring her praise at the city gate. Thank you all for joining us today. Again, a happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there. May mercy and peace and love be multiplied to each and every one of you. Have a great day.